Okay, today I want to make a carrot cake, and I looked up several recipes on Google and I didn't have all the ingredients for all of them. So here's what I came up with. Here I'm using 2 cups of all-purpose flour. You could also use cake flour. I'm also going to be using 2 teaspoons of baking powder. Next, I will be using 1 teaspoon of salt. I will also be using a 1/4 teaspoon of ground cardamom. You don't have to use that, that's optional, but I do like ground cardamom in my carrot cake. I'm also going to be using 1 teaspoon of baking soda and 1½ teaspoons of ground cinnamon. Okay, so while I'm combining all of this, I just want to mention, I will put links below to carrot cake recipes that I sort of looked at to try to make them. And here's the problem. I looked at one that I wanted to make and I did not have all the ingredients. So then I'm like, oh, let me find something else. I looked at another one and I only had part of those ingredients. So this recipe that I'm coming up with is just basically what I had in my pantry and what I'm using. So I might make adjustments in the description below. For example, I used a whole can of evaporated milk. I probably could have scaled back on that, but I didn't want to waste a little bit of evaporated milk, so I threw it in the cake batter. So I will adjust some ratio of ingredients in the description below. Okay, next to the wet ingredients. Here I have 1½ cups of sugar, and to that I will be adding 3 large eggs. Next, I will be adding a ½ cup of vegetable oil. You could use the oil of your choice. I just went with a vegetable oil. Okay, so here's where I added 12 ounces of evaporated milk. Now in hindsight, I think 8 ounces would have worked better. So if you are in my situation and you don't have buttermilk or whole milk and you're using evaporated milk, you can use the whole can. The cake came out great, but 8 ounces I think would have worked better for a thicker batter. Okay, now I am going to add 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract. By the way, I'd like to mention that all of the ingredients and measurements will be located in the description below this video. I will also include other links to recipe videos that I think you might like. Okay, so now I'm just going to take my hand mixer and combine all of these ingredients well. I'm probably going to mix it at a medium-low speed for around a minute or so. Okay, so now that that is mixed together, I am now going to combine the dry ingredients into the wet ingredients. And I'm going to continue mixing and beating this until everything is combined well. Okay, so while this is mixing, I just wanted to mention, at this point you can definitely add raisins, walnuts. I also like to add crushed pineapple if I have it, but as far as adding walnuts, or even sometimes I used to add pecans, I don't do that anymore because my son was diagnosed with tree nut, peanut allergies, so we don't have nuts in the house. But definitely you can add those because it does make a delicious carrot cake. So now I'm just scraping the sides of the bowl. I'm going to continue to mix, and then I will be adding my shredded carrot. Okay, so here I have around 2 cups of shredded carrots. Now, I did buy a scale, so I wanted to weigh. It's basically 4 carrots, and they weigh around 150 grams. So I will be putting weighted measurements in the description below for a more accurate recipe for you guys, because I know in the past you guys have asked for that, so I'm trying to consciously do that now. So into my bowl, I am adding around 2 cups of shredded carrots. And at this point, you could also add your raisins, your walnuts, or pecans. The carrot cake tastes so good with a walnut or pecans in it. But again, I have to do without, and guess what? It's still a good cake. So I'm just going to combine this well, and then it's ready to go into my cake pans. Here I have two 8x2-inch cake pans. I've already greased them, floured them. I even added parchment paper to make sure it doesn't stick. So I'm going to evenly distribute the cake batter into two 8-inch cake pans. By the way, if you are using 9-inch cake pans, you'll probably just have to adjust the bake time. Okay, so at this point, you probably want to tap your cake pans onto the counter to release any air bubbles, which I did not do, and I'll show you what happened because of it later. But anyways, you want to bake this in a preheated oven at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 35 minutes or until a toothpick comes out clean. Okay, so my cakes are done, and you want to allow your cakes to cool completely before you frost them because the frosting will slide and melt all over the place. So I am going to allow my cakes to cool completely. That may take 30 minutes, that may take an hour. Just make sure that they are completely cooled. Okay, on to my frosting. Here I have one 8-ounce block of softened cream cheese, and when I mean it's softened, I mean it's softened. Leave it on the counter all day if you have to. This definitely will make your life easier when making a frosting. So I'm just going to beat the frosting, break it apart, and whip it before I add the softened butter because cream cheese is a lot more solid than the butter. So now I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. Again, going to mix that into the cream cheese. I want to make sure the cream cheese is smooth and silky. And then after doing that, I will be adding my softened butter. Here I will be adding a stick and a half of softened butter. And I am using salted butter. If you have unsalted butter, then I would add a pinch of salt to this frosting. It really does enhance the flavor and balance the sweetness of the frosting, in my opinion. But since I'm using salted butter, I'm not going to add any salt. Okay, so I'm just going to continue mixing and beating this until the frosting is smooth and creamy. I'm using a medium heat and I will be beating this for around 2 minutes. Okay, so now that that is combined well, I am going to add 2 cups of powdered sugar. You may also know it as confectioner sugar. I will be adding 2 cups. Before I start combining with my hand mixer, I'm just going to manually mix it with my little spatula here, and this will help avoid a mess. So if you are using a hand mixer, that's just something you can do to not have powdered sugar fly everywhere. So I'm going to continue beating this until the sugar is combined well, and again, the frosting is smooth and creamy. Okay, so after frosting the cake, it looks like this, but now you'll want to allow the cake to set in the refrigerator for at least 1 hour before serving. And after the hour, by the way, I did not wait an hour because it was getting late and I wanted to film this, I'm going to cut into it and allow my husband to have the first piece because this is his favorite cake. I hope you give this recipe a try. I hope you like it, and thanks for watching.